Hi there, and welcome to my video today. I am going to walk you through my blank page to finished mixed media collage art. What I'm doing here is putting down a base of satin medium to adhere my collage papers. I often start my pieces with some papers just to kind of get rid of that blank page and get some inspiration flowing. So I picked a few different pieces of patterns and colors that I was interested in. These are just scrapbook pages that I'm using for the background. A lot of time in my finished pieces, you often don't even see these, but it just is a way to get started. It's my way in. So I just kind of glue them down with the satin medium so it's not too shiny on that first layer. And just putting in some images that I like, whatever kind of catches my eye. And then what I do is just kind of move around a really thin layer of satin medium to create just a little bit of a buffer between the paper and whatever other materials I put on top of it. Otherwise, each paper kind of acts differently. So you don't know if it's going to buckle or wrinkle. So these are all the different colors that I'm using: green gold, some raw umber, and I often use gesso as the white just to kind of give it a little tooth. And also, it's a little less potent, I guess you'd say, than regular white acrylic paint. So right now I'm just moving some color around, not really thinking too hard about what I'm doing, just kind of enjoying the process of mixing paints. That's one of the things I really like doing. And then I had this idea to create some drips, but also I wanted to create a little bit of a big space to put a stencil down to remove the paint. It's kind of like reverse stenciling. So there's that pattern. It's very subtle because it's a very similar color to the paper on the other side. But I try not to get too precious about what I'm doing in the beginning, just kind of getting some layers down. And also keep in mind, I am stopping a little in between some of these to let it dry. So I'm not putting this orange right on top of wet green paint. Just something to keep in mind when you're creating. This is a little bit of movie magic, and I did allow it to dry a little so it wouldn't look like mud. So you could see that stencil come through. It's not real sharp because there's a lot of lines and a lot of opportunity for the paint to get under the stencil, but it does create a little interest. And then I'm just using my fingertip dabber to create some circles. Now this is green gold, which I adore and I use a lot, but it can be a little strong, so I added a little cadmium orange. I was inspired by some fall colors and just felt like I wanted to create something that had a little bit of a fall tone to it. So I'm just moving quickly, not thinking too much about it, because that's the beauty of acrylics and collage. You can always do it over. It's not set in stone. You could do another layer, you could put a piece of paper over it. So my thought is that when I'm doing this, I just want to enjoy what I'm doing, have fun, maybe learn something new, and just keep going until I feel good about it and not worry so much about that messy middle. So just creating some drips here. And I did let that dry again. You can see how the orange is a little darker when it's dried. So just putting down a stencil. I really like the shape of this one. There is some turquoise. I wanted to add a little bit of a complementary color. And for orange, that would be blue. It's very bright, which I really love. But I remember thinking, oh boy, this is pretty bright and pretty different from what I was going with so far. So started getting a little hesitant about my bold choices. And I just wanted to bring in a little more blue to kind of round it out a little rather than it just being in that upper corner. So then what I did was add a little gesso in the middle and kind of scraped it off a little. It got a little too dark, and then you could kind of see that polka dotted paper underneath. I just felt like that black was a little harsh. So I wanted to kind of counterbalance it a little bit. And I also knew I was going to put something in the middle there as a focal point, so I wanted to tone down that orange as well. So these papers that I'm putting down now are just some deli paper jelly prints that I made myself from stencils. So I believe I used some kind of either green, gold, and white with that or a fluorescent green. And that was just kind of a funny looking stencil. And this is stamped similar to the pattern in the white. So kind of subconsciously it brings it together. And then this week I wanted to use an owl for my focal point because it kind of reminds me of fall and just hibernation and winter's coming. So again, I'm using the satin medium. I have to be careful when I'm using these printouts because I do use an inkjet printer. So if they get wet, if these printouts get wet, they get very dark, and then it looks kind of funny if there's one dark spot. So you can kind of see it dried a little darker than it was because of the moisture underneath. And here I'm just adding another piece of that jelly paper, jelly print jelly paper. I just felt like that shape wasn't right. And these are little, I don't know, it's kind of like a halo. Just wanted to add something to accentuate the owl. And any kind of shape can get tricky when you put it down with the glue. So I put it down first and then I add the glue and just kind of keep it in place, hold it in place while I put it down. So I kind of gave it a little bit of a halo effect. You can see it right there. And this is a Derwent Inktense pencil. And it's kind of in a, I would say like an army green color. I just wanted to darken the edges just to give it a little bit of a feeling of a frame or a border. And I'm just wetting it a little with a brush because the Derwent pencils are awesome. If you wet them, they turn into watercolors, but they're permanent, so you can't really move them after they're wet. So this is a Caran d'Ache crayon that I'm just kind of bringing out some shapes. And this is my old handy dandy Posca paint marker, which I love. Just kind of creating some marks here with different white tools. Back to the Caran d'Ache. And these two can get wet and they kind of create a nice watercolor vibe. And there is my sentiment, seek. That is something I write on the deli paper as well. So just adding a little more interest to the corner, just so it's not a big blob of blue. And then I'm just adding like a little border. Kind of feels like a frame. And this is just basic gray and some white gesso. I just felt like that corner was a little bare, a little too monotone. So I wanted to bring something out so that the eye will be drawn to there. And this is another Derwent pencil, just kind of outlining it and drawing attention to it. Little feather shape that kind of turned into a tree. So here it is, the final product. Just a lot of fun making marks and layering papers and colors. And I had so much fun making this today. I hope that you enjoyed watching it. And if you did like this video, I'd really appreciate you giving me a thumbs up. And if you really like this video, I'm going to put